Alright guys, welcome back for another video on HAIKYU Fly High, and today we got some confirmation in game as to who will be the next UR character. A lot of us were already expecting that, even though I was kind of hoping for a rerun, but they decided to just continue with new UR characters, and the next one should be Miya. Now you can see the title of this pre-order pack is Strongest Challenger. That's basically what in Naruto is known for, so it should be one of the Miya twins, and between the two it should be Miya coming out first according to JP and Taiwan, okay? So that's kind of why I know we should be getting Miya, and because he's a quick spike setter. However, there are actually another UR quick spike setter as well, which is going to be Kagayama UR, and that's kind of why in today's video I'm actually going to compare the two, and just to show you guys what are the main difference, because the two of them do have very different play style, and hopefully that will help you guys to decide which one you want to summon for. Obviously, this is a gacha game. If you actually just really like one of the characters, then just go for it. But otherwise, I will try to highlight all of the main difference between the two of them, okay? Now, before getting into that, I do actually want to show you guys something else, which is that we actually have a new gift code. So please make sure to actually use this. I have already redeemed it, so I won't be able to use it, but basically the gift code is going to be HAIKYU Fly, okay? So a capital H when you spell HAIKYU, and Fly is just all lowercase, okay? You will be getting, I believe, 3 SSR tickets when using it, so I can click redeem. I have already used it, so if I click this, it's just a gift code already used, but obviously you guys are still able to redeem it if you haven't done so already, so do it now, okay? Okay, now let's move on to the actual main topic of today, which is a comparison between Miya and also UR version of Kagayama. Now, I'm not going to read out all of their skills. You guys can read that yourself. I'll share a link in the video comment section for you guys to do that. But what I have done is simply summarize them into a few different points, or headers, I guess, and then I can actually do a side-by-side comparison when talking about each one of them, okay? So basically, it's going to be their automata, what happens when they actually do a set, the buff stack they get, which is basically a quite unique mechanics for both of them, what you're going to get when you actually dupe them up, and then also lastly talking about the bonds, because I do feel like the bond is actually going to be a quite big aspect of them when it comes to team building as well, okay? So let's start off with Ultimate. So for Miya, he has an Ultimate, which is basically a serve, whereas for Kagayama, it's a set it up. So the two of them is already different at that point. I do also want to point out, even though I didn't write it up here, but Kagayama does have a skill, which is a serve as well, and that actually makes Kagayama very unique in the sense that he has both a set it up, a set, and also a serve. I think all of the other setters in this game can only do 2 of them at once, so a lot of them you only see like either a set and the serve, or a set and the setter dump, etc. Or maybe even like a serve and the setter dump. But Kagayama is unique enough that he's the only one capable of doing all 3, okay? But that's kind of what makes him stand out. But in terms of the actual ultimate for Miya, it's basically an ult, however, have 2 different phases. And what that basically means is that even if you scored with his serve, the first time around with his ultimate, you can still use his ultimate right afterwards, because it just then goes from like a jump serve to a jump floater, okay? And that is actually quite important, because there are quite a few characters in this game which can actually spam ultimate. However, Miya is the only one who can do that without using any dupes, right? So the best comparison you can make is, for example, to your version for Okawa. Your version for Okawa, if you actually have him at 60, he can literally spam his ultimate back to back. If he gets serve ace, will win within 2 net crossing. However, he needs 6 dupes for that to happen. As for Miya, only one without any dupes can already spam his ultimate attack twice in a row. Okay, so that's kind of what makes him unique in terms of server. Now his serve does have a slightly other ability as well. So for example, if he actually aim at enemy's weak spot, then he get extra buff, etc. But in all honesty, if we just talk about single serve, I still think Owakawa is better. I think Miya is more consistent in the sense that he's always gonna get those extra buff. But the same with Owakawa is that he has very high likelihood of getting crit, and then he have all those built-in crit buff, etc. So I do feel a vast majority of the time, you are version 4 Kawa still have a stronger serve, but as for Miya, it's just a bit more consistent, and also he can already spam 2 ultimate without needing any dupes. His jump floater, I believe, also have another ability, which is that when you actually do that serve, the opponent is not able to use a quick spike or power spike straight away. However, to me, that doesn't really matter too much, because what that basically means is just the enemy should be using setter dump instead. And a lot of the setters in the future do have setter dump, so that is not really going to be a standout point for me, okay? The main standout point for me in terms of his ultimate attack is more the fact that you can spam it twice without needing any dupes. Then let's move on to Kagayama. This is a set dump, a pretty strong set dump. It also have an additional ability where you are able to increase the enemy block cooldown if they're already in cooldown. Once again, for me, this is not like a huge thing. It sounds on paper, it sounds really, really nice. But the same with once I talk about, for example, his bond with SSR Hinata later on, is that a lot of quick attacks in this game can actually ignore blocks anyway. So increasing enemy block cooldown doesn't actually mean too much when you already have quick spikes which can ignore blocks. So that's kind of why this sounds very good on paper, but in all honesty, in practice, it probably doesn't make a huge amount of difference. Okay, so that's the two ultimate attack. Now let's move on to the set. So for Miya, it's quite simple. You are just able to remove debuff, and that makes him quite nice in the sense that I think he's one of the few characters who can actually remove debuff for a teammate. Okay, there's quite a few characters who can remove debuff on themselves, but to actually do it for like essentially all of your teammates one by one, depending on who you set to, that's pretty massive and it's better utility use. Whereas then for Kagayama is that you're able to buff quick spot by 15%. Okay, so take note of here is quick spike. So that already shows Kagayama's more biased towards quick spiking, and in fact that's also going to be the case for Miya as well. So that's quite straightforward. Then let's talk about their core mechanic, which is basically both of them have ability to get some stacks of a certain buff, and those buffs are going to be quite unique to them, and also very important in terms of how you can get the most out of those two characters. For Miya, you basically get 2 stacks when your teammate don't crit, and that's kind of why a lot of time you want to play Miya in an Inarizaki based team, because in Inarizaki based team, a lot of characters don't have abilities to crit, or they will be reducing their own crit rate and convert them to something else. And that's kind of why a lot of time, I know back in the days, a lot of people were saying like twins is meta. To me, twins were never meta, because it doesn't matter how good Miya or the Miya twins are, the fact that you rely on playstyle of not critting means you're not meta, because 80% of the characters in this game rely on crit, okay? But that's kind of why I do feel like when you play Miya, a lot of time you would be kind of quite focused down into just an Inarizaki team playstyle where you don't actually try to crit, and that can make team building potentially slightly more difficult. This can get slightly help when we have a dupe, which I'll talk about later on, but our base level is basically just whenever your teammate don't crit, okay? This is able to give yourself some extra set, and also whenever you do a set, you will be consuming of your stacks, and that will be increasing your attack technique and also quick spike by 2.5% per stack. And the best thing about this is it lasts for 10 net crossing, which is massive. Now, I don't actually have Asumiya, so I haven't been able to test this. If someone do, then let me know. But basically, I'm not sure whether this can actually stack up. So for example, let's say if I consume, let's say only maybe, so first of all, you can get maximum 10 stack, okay? So let's say for simplicity, if somehow I'm able to get 10 stack, and therefore I'm able to increase both my attack technique and quick spike by 25%, I don't know whether that would be able to stack up, for example, the next time I set, if I have 10 stacks already, would I be able to get another additional 25% increase, because, you know, it's still within 10 net crossing? I'm not sure whether that aspect of the buff is able to stack up. If it can, then this can make him potentially insane, because 10 net crossing is huge. 10 net crossing is essentially like 2 turns, right? And if you think about it, normally in each turn, you will be setting at least once, right? Unless literally you meant to get a surface, otherwise you should be setting. So that's kind of why I do feel like if there is the potential to actually stack up, this can be absolutely massive. But whether that can actually be stacked up, that's something to be checked. And then let's talk about Kagayama. So what happens for Kagayama in order to actually get his own unique version of stacks of buff? Basically, he get 1 at the start of each turn, but also more importantly, he is also going to get 1 extra stack when the opponent's serve, dump, or spike is basically a critical. And that is going to already tell you a way of how you're supposed to play Kagayama. It's not so much depending on your own teammates, unlike, you know, for example, Asumiya relying on his own teammate not to crit. You're actually relying on the way of how the opponent is going to be played. If they play, let's say, a Shorotozawa team, which is very crit heavy, then you are going to be in a lot of, you know, you are you're basically lucky, right? You're going to get all of your buff stack out very, very quickly. However, let's say if you're actually going to be face up someone like Inarizaki, who actually are going to play in a playstyle where you're not able to actually get those extra stacks because the enemy will never crit, then you're going to have a very painful time instead. And what does that stack actually do? Basically, it will be consumed whenever you use side surf, dump, or spike, and you'll be able to increase your awareness by 20% for 2 net crossings, okay? Just for that one particular action, or for that one particular character who performed that action. So that's basically the difference between the two stacks and how you can obtain them. Now, both of them are going to get something quite interesting when they dupe them up. For Miya, it's basically just a slight increase to their buff. I think it's something like you change this 2% of set for each stack to like 5%, something like that. It's not like a massive buff, but what's more interesting is that you are able to get 5 stacks whenever you consume any set of stacks of the buff, okay? And what that makes it really, really interesting is now all of a sudden, you are no longer relying on your teammate to not crit. Because you're already having a way to consistently buff yourself up by simply at the whenever just consuming your buff, and your buff will be consumed very easily whenever you set, right? So it basically turns it into a very good cycle where you get a buff, you consume it, you get more buff back, etc. And you have a less reliance on your teammates to not crit. And that's actually going to be quite important if you do decide to play as Miya outside of a Naruto team, okay? So that's kind of what's going to be the main difference for his dupe. Once again, this is only going to be important if you do plan to play Miya outside of Naruto. If you're only going to play him in Naruto, then I'll probably say it's not worth it. Whereas for Kagayama, his dupe is just a massive buff. Now, because this video is more focused about the comparison between the two, I'm not going to go too much into it. But for Kagayama, I would actually highly recommend try to dupe him up. Like both his dupe 2 ability and dupe 6 ability is able to give so much buff into your whole team, okay? So both of them are really worthwhile. And the buffing percentage-wise, is a lot higher than what Miya is able to give. So I'll probably say if you only have resources for one of them, but you're willing to actually dupe them up, Kagayama is probably going to benefit a lot more from the dupes than Miya. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the bonds. So for the bonds, obviously there's the one for the twins, so Miya and also Miya. Both of them are going to get 15% buff to attack technique. That's for the whole match, okay, unless one of them gets subbed off. So that's quite nice. They also have an actual skill which they can use, which ignore blocks, which is also quite nice, but Kagayama also have that with Hinata, okay? And the second buff, he also have a deployment buff with Kita and also twins together. So all 3 of them are going to get extra buff, okay? Then for Kagayama, first of all, like I said, he has a deployment bomb with SSR Hinata. Hinata is going to get buff awareness and also strength, quite big buff as well. And also that actually, the attack itself is going to ignore block, just like what the twins one is able to do. And furthermore, this is quite unique about this bomb. It actually reset the cooldown if it's scored. So for all of the other deployment bombs, which is like an attack in this game, normally you can only use that once per match, I believe, for one set. That normally basically means you need to choose the right timing to actually use it. For this one, however, it's very different. If you actually manage to score with it, you're able to reset the cooldown. And that's massive because you can actually have one of the strongest attacks in this game and you actually spam it up. And it's also very unique in the sense that it also ignores blocks, so it's actually quite easy to score with that as well. And that's what basically makes this combo so good. Because unlike Miya, which actually needs a combo with his twins and can only do it once, Kagayama can actually make an SSR character hit just as hard as a UR or SP character and can use that multiple times in a single match, okay? So that's going to be a massive buff for Kagayama and also the usage of SSR Hinata. And then the second thing is that he also have bonds with SP Hinata and also SP Nishinoya. Now, the one with SP Hinata, I probably wouldn't actually recommend. I personally think Kagayama pairs better with the SSR version of Hinata than the SP version of Hinata. Because the SP version of Hinata is basically allow you to able to use his buff stack also doing receiving. However, what could actually end up happening is that if your opponent is not able to spam crit all the time, you are going to run out of your buff stacks very, very quickly. quickly, and then you will end up using off your stacks for your receive rather than your spikes. And vast majority of the time, you prefer to use them for your spikes. Okay, so that's kind of why out of two I normally prefer pairing up with SSR version of Hinata rather than the SP version. And then second thing, he also have a bond with the SP version of Nishinoya. Now this one is actually really good because it gives him another way of getting buff stacks when Nishinoya uses his ult, and that basically allows a way for you to more consistently get some extra buff without relying on the enemy so much. Okay, so that's why I do feel like the SP Nishinoya bond is going to be quite important, but the Hinata one now I'll probably say it's not worth it. Okay. Now let's just wrap up this video, and I'll make a few comments in terms of the playstyle for the two characters and also some of my own suggestions in terms of which one should be going for, depending on what kind of players you are. Okay, so first of all, the two characters have very different playstyle. Okay, you can already see that. As for Miya, is more for Inarizaki, where your whole team don't crit, whereas for Kagayama, it's going to be a lot more dependent on which enemy you'll be facing. So as a result, I would say in PvP meta, especially in a defense team, I would say in our Naruto team tend to be better than a quick spike team oriented around Kagayama, because you don't actually know who will be attacking you. So for example, if I say a Kagayama based quick spike team, I can simply just swap to a Naruto team, and that team is going to have an awful time against me because I would never be able to crit, and therefore Kagayama would never be able to stack out his buff. Yes, you can get one stack at the start of each turn, but you will just consume that when you do a surf. Okay, so essentially Kagayama is going to have a horrible time trying to get any kind of buff to his whole team. Whereas for Inarizaki, if I set it as a defense team, I don't really care who's attacking me. No one's going to affect me at all, okay? And this is also going to be even more relevant in the future when there's going to be SP Kemma. Now, SP Kemma is going to be a receiving team, and a lot of time you will be see them being used in order to counter quick spike team, right? Because receive team have that advantage over quick spiking team. However, one thing with Kenma's receiving team is that the whole mechanics around them is actually using debuff to reduce your crit rate. However, you can reduce all the crit rate you want for Inarizaki. It doesn't make any difference at all to me because I'm never planning to crit in the first place, and in fact, you just give me a more consistent way for me to build on my buffs. So that's kind of what I do feel like in a PvP, especially defensive team point of view. I do feel like Inarizaki is going to have an edge over Kagayama. Then the other perspective I also want to talk about is more from like a resource intensive point of view, and also what's going to be the highest cap you can do. And for those kind of ones, I would say Inarizaki is going to be cheaper to be built because you will be building vast much time in an actual Inarizaki team. You wouldn't be mix and match. And if you actually build an Inarizaki team, you have the twins or the two UR character, but two other characters have to be SSR. A lot of times it's going to be Kita, and then probably either the Liberal or Rintaro Suna. Okay, so either way, you're going to have some SSR characters in your team, so it's going to be cheaper to build. And also, if you are planning to play Asumir only in a Narizaki team, you don't actually need to worry about his dupes either, because you can already get those buffs without needing the dupes. So as a result, it's just going to be quite cheap for you to actually build that in Narizaki team. Whereas for Kagayama-based quick spike team, I personally think it's going to cost you more resources. However, it's also going to be able to have a much higher cap at the end of the days because it's going to be more you are an SP character. And that's because of all of the bonds Kagayama is able to build. Also, another thing I do want to point out is that Kagayama is actually able to so it's actually able to enable SSR version of Hinata to hit just as hard as a UR character. So if you're really set on a cheap budget version of Kagayama UR, you can still build it that way, because what you can just do is simply just have Kagayama plus SSR version of Hinata, and in fact that's going to be even cheaper than Narizaki because you only have one UR character, okay? However, there's also going to be a much better way of building Kagayama as a whole, is that you can also bring in other SP characters which do have a bond, for example, SP version of Nishinoya. And there's also Karasuno, the school as a whole, is also the only school right now in this game which actually have like 4 SP or UR characters. So you can actually easily build an all SP or UR character and still retain a school bond. And that is pretty much like unique to Karasuno school character. So Kagayama does have that extra edge on that front as well, okay? And then in terms of the other bits and bobs, I think those are probably the main biggest differentiator. But the other bits and bobs is going to be, for example, whether you prefer a setter who has an ult or a setter with a setter dump, and obviously that can also give you slight indication in terms of which way round you want to go. If you have extra dupes as well, like I said, you can probably get a lot more out of your money by actually investing dupes in Kagayama rather than investing in dupes in Miya, because Miya only really requires a buff if you want to play him outside of Inarizaki. But yeah, so I would say those are probably going to be the main pros and cons for each of the two setters. Let me know what you guys think, and also which quick spike setter are you planning to get.